Hello. Today we're going to be talking about the notes, the rests, and their values. Let's start with notes. This is the whole note. You can tell it's a whole note because it just looks like a whole, but it's not spelled like whole, H-O-L-E. Now this is the big guy. If I divide the big guy by 2, the whole, into 2 parts, I divide it into halves, which is why these are called half notes. Notice all I did was when I went from a whole note to a half note, I just add a stem. These are easy to remember. If you remember, the notes that start with the H sound are hollow. Half notes and whole notes are hollow. Now, if I divide the big guy into 4, I get fourths. Another name for a fourth is a quarter, which is why these are called quarter notes, because there are 4 of them in the big guy. It's also a half note divided by 2. Now, if I divide a quarter note in half, I get these eighth notes. Eighth notes have flags. Flags always go forward. And the eighth notes have 1 flag. These are single eighth notes, and these are 2 eighth notes beamed together. They're the same thing. If I divide the big guy into 8, I get these eighths, which is why they're called eighth notes. If I divide the big guy into 16, I get these little guys, 16th notes. They also have flags, but this time there are 2. I can beam them together as well, and I can beam them into 4, 3, or 2, depending on my rhythmic needs. But if I divide the 8th note in half, I get 16th notes. And they're called 16th notes because there are 16 of them in the big guy. Now let's talk about their values. This is our note tree. And it's important to remember how many notes are in each of the big ones. And it's also important to remember that if I have this big guy, no matter what his value is, right now it's 4, if I divide that by 2, or in half, I get 2. If I divide the big guy, 4, into quarters, 1. If I divide the big guy into eighths, 4 over 8 reduces to 1/2. And if I divide the big guy into 16, 4 over 16 reduces to 1/4. So their value is how many of them fit into the big guy. Okay, now let's go to our rests. This is our whole rest. And again, it looks like a hole in the ground. If I divide the whole rest in half, I get 2 half rests. And these are almost the same thing, but they're flipped the other way. So we say a whole rest looks like a hole, and a half rest looks like a hat. Whole, half hat. If I divide the half rest into 2 parts, I get quarter rests. If I divide the quarter rest in half, or the big guy into eighths, I get eighth rests. And just like the eighth notes, they have 1 flag. If I divide those in half into 16 parts, I get these 16th rests. And just like the 16th notes had 2 flags, the 16th rests have 2 flags. And it's the same with our values. This is our rest tree. The big guy, let's say he gets 4. He can get any value we want, but right now we're giving him 4. If I divide that into half, I get 2. 4 into quarters would be 1. 4 into eighths would be 1/2. And 4 into 16 would be 1/4. So those are our notes, our rests, and the trees.